All right, boom. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smithy with another GSD Mode Podcast, back with my good friend Jim Brown. What's up, brother?
Not much. How you doing?
Doing damn good, dude. Just enjoying this lovely economy.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Yeah,
Aren't we
yeah,
all?
yeah. No, we were just
Interesting
talking.
times.
Yeah. No, we were just talking off air for those that are watching, listening about just this recession and how it's impacting markets and so forth, and some of that I'm seeing with being so attached to real estate. But anyway, I know today we wanted to focus on focus. We're going to do a deep dive into focus, and it's one of these things that so many people struggle with when it comes to distractions, when it comes to lack of focus. I do so many damn surveys, man, of like for a multitude of different reasons, but surveying pretty much real estate agents of like, what's the number one obstacle in your business? What's the number one thing that's prohibiting you? Number one thing or top things that are prohibiting you from accomplishing your real estate goals. And it's insane the amount that come back with lack of focus, distractions, which all mean the same thing. But we're in this world today where it's like, if you are not intentional with it, you're going to
have a chance.
Have self-induced ADD.
I was just looking up the name of that book. Yeah. And, just like everybody else, I try to improve my focus and, build in daily habits to kind of optimize that. And shoot, we even have the world's best nootropic formula. It used to be EMF and we improved it to zone, but that's always been something that you and I have shared, right? We're always trying to optimize our performance. We're always trying to optimize mental and physical performance in our focus. And, part of that is building discipline. And a lot of it also is just how much bandwidth we have. In this book, Stolen Focus, this guy really breaks down everything about he really goes into a scientific explanation of everything. And one of the things that I've been playing with and that probably hits everybody is just the amount of things and the amount of stimulus that we have coming in, right? And so if you think about it, back in the day, or, I think we can all remember back to the time before cell phones, at least I'm old enough to, where you would get up and I could digest a scientific article and blast through 4 or 5 of those in a day and study for my class, my biology classes and all that, and be able to retain. And now today, it seems like I can't do anything like that, and you could also say that's aging and neuroplasticity, but really it's because there's so much input. And this is something that he really talked about in the book. But if I go through and I scroll through Twitter, right, how many different subjects am I reading like in a 5-minute period, right? If you're reading all these different tweets, they're all subject changes. And every time that you read that, you think about it, you try to absorb it, and then you change the subject again immediately like that, it costs resources, right? And so you do that for 5-10 minutes, sometimes an hour. Just think about how many times your brain has tried to look at something and then pivots right away, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm going to focus on this one thing for an hour. When that's done, I'm going to go over here and focus on this thing for an hour. And so, the way that social media is really set up like that, we get a quick hit of information, whether it's a 5-second video, like a reel, or, worse, a TikTok, or even a Twitter. You're reading like 138 characters at once, and then you're changing subjects immediately. And one of the things that really hit home with me was that really costs resources. And so, this guy went and lived on kind of a desert island for a couple months and really noticed his brain changing, and not doing that and really having the time to focus on one issue at a time really changed the way that his brain functioned and the way that his focus was. And so I found that very interesting.
Yeah. And then you said the name of the book is Stolen Focus.
Stolen Focus. Yeah.
And I know you've been telling me about it. I just haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, but I wrote it down. I gotta go snag it. Yeah, dude, it is. It is. I mean, it's like I said earlier, if you are not intentional with it today, more so than any other time, you're gonna be fucked, dude. Like, I don't know if it's the differences between ADD and ADHD. I've been told I've had both my whole life, but I know, I don't buy into that, because I am somebody that does have the ability for intense focus. but I do have to be really, really intentional, with certain things. And, if you don't take the time to kind of block these certain things or set your life up in a certain way, man, it's, like the world's working against us. It's not working for us. Like as an example, you mentioned Twitter. Since Elon bought Twitter, and took it over, I hadn't been
Yeah.
on Twitter in years, dude. And but I've had an account, right? So I jump in there the last couple weeks. And, I mean, dude, but it's like every time I get in there, dude, it just, yeah, I can feel, I don't know what the feeling is, but I feel something's off with my head, dude.
Yeah.
I feel almost dizzy, going in there. And
Yeah.
I'm, dude,
Yeah.
like, I can't do this. I can't handle it, man. You know,
Well, I try to really focus on one subject and not read every damn thing that comes up, if I'm going to do it. But at the little test, one of the things that he suggests, and we've all heard this before, but I won't start the day by picking up my phone and scrolling through Twitter and reading all these messes and fires. I have a very intentional list of what I'm supposed to work on that day and what I need to get done professionally, whether it's emails or projects or whatever. And, I'll tackle those when my brain's fresh and my resources are at their highest. And only after, I'm way past that time in the day, then I'll go through and read Twitter or respond to messages or whatever. And doing so, I've had a renewed focus. It's much easier for me to stay on point. And if I have to write an email or whatever, communicate with people, it's easier for me to generate that content and be specific with it. And that's something that definitely I struggle with. And I notice a difference if I wake up and look at social media and jump my brain all around and then I start to work, it's not the same. It's
yeah,
just not.
yeah,
And I think just to your point of being very intentional about your focus and what, you only have so many resources. The bandwidth is only so wide. So, you have to be really careful with what you spend those resources on.
yeah. Yeah. So what I'd like to do, man, and I think this would be helpful for anybody watching, listening, is maybe to go through a list of different things that, you and I do to maintain that focus, to improve that focus. And, and kind of two phases here. Like phase number one is, of things like we're just talking about, with like not checking your phone first thing in the morning, kind of habitual stuff. And then the second component, which we can get into afterwards, is, more of the, kind of diet supplementation element of that, because I think both of those are equally as important. And there's definitely hacks that I have found that make a world of difference for me in both of those things. So starting with the first one, like you just mentioned, okay, first thing when you get up, not allowing yourself to get in the habit of checking your phone first thing when you get up. Like what are some of the top things that either you're doing or that you make sure that you don't do that you found impact focus, and whether these be, things that you're doing also. I'm intrigued to, hear more about what you learned from the book about what this guy's doing, what he found out as well.
Well, there's a couple of things in there that are real important, and letting your mind wander and kind of being bored and come up with ideas. But for my personal productivity and kind of keeping my ability to focus on things, it's definitely not reading any social media when I first get up. And if I look at emails, I know which ones I'm going to respond to. Someone I'll look and not even open any of them unless it's like from a customer or somebody that that's something that I'm going to deal with first. And then I set my priority list for the day. I literally have a checklist, and I think we've talked about this before, but I have a hit list that I'm working on each day. And those are the things that I really want to prioritize. And I actually make a check mark and cross them off. I write them down, as I get them done. And if I can't get them all done, that's the first one on, that's where the list starts for the next day. But being very intentional with that and not spending my resources early on shit that I don't want to get done or, wasteful things has made a real big impact for me. Second part of that is waking up and this kind of goes into the supplement side, but not immediately drinking caffeine, but waiting for an hour before you consume any caffeine. Second thing or third thing there, the circadian rhythm that your body wakes up and helps you go to sleep at night. Part of that is watching the sun up and sun down. And you don't have to per se see it exactly, but you have to be in the light for 3 to 5 minutes. And that's made a big impact on me waking up and my brain waking up for the day. And then also helping my sleep at night. And, we'll talk about the caffeine later, but those two things, three things. Lastly, I'll sit outside for a little while and drink, whatever. Then I have non-caffeinated coffee that I'll drink first thing in the morning. And I sit outside, throw the ball for my dog or whatever, and just relax and not listen to anything, not talk. I'm literally just sitting outside, looking at the lake, letting my mind wander and just kind of, contemplating what, not specifically what I'm doing or whatever, but just observing nature, kind of letting my mind wander and be bored a little bit, and kind of warm up. And those are some of the things that he talks about as well. And those four things are probably the biggest impact that I've noticed, as far as me being very productive, at least for the first half of the day, if not all day. Yeah.
Yeah, love it, dude. Yeah, for me, and I'll we'll go in this in a couple different parts, because there's the things that, like, intentionally blocking distractions or activities that that easily distract us or make us lose focus. And then we've got, like we mentioned, the kind of supplemental side of it, the diet side of it. So I'll kind of break this into, because I do a lot of different things than maybe a lot of others, and for specific reasons. But and I've been experimenting this for a long time, because for me, focus is like, it's the superpower, right? Like, if the more focus that you can gain, the better with it. So, the first thing, and I'll kind of explain the rhyme to the reason, because I think all of us are wired slightly differently. So the first thing for me is, like, I make sure that I spend a lot of time in reflection to identify and break down, okay, like, what are the things that are distracting me? Because I think so many times that we can get into, I don't know, jump into whatever it may be, watching YouTube or like, but not having that conscious awareness that this thing is really a hindrance. So I spend a lot of time in reflection with that, with those. But if I were to go down to a few of the best practices that I have, and I'll talk about first the things that, like, okay, I know now, this is, I shouldn't say that I know this from personal experience, but from the due diligence and research that I've read on the harm that short form content, all these, this TikTok, YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, Facebook reels, the harm that it does to our brains and our attention span. And we can see it now. You can, like, as those start to raise in popularity, you can see the decline in the amount of, like, people's attention span online. Like, this is all easily tracked and measured, and then diminishing, element of that. So, as odd as it may sound, I don't allow myself to watch any short form vertical content. And I think that it probably helps too, because it doesn't put me in the echo chamber that so many are in, because you just, it's easy to create an echo chamber of narratives, with that short form vertical content. So, like, I'm very, aware of, like, what's going to do that damage to me, so with that, and then same thing with you, like, when I get up in the morning, I'm very strict with my morning routine. And not checking my phone first thing when I wake. It's like, I get up, I've got my routine, I do. So right when I wake up, I eat, I'll go through my self-development, and I still continue my self-development as I'm working out. Then I'll work out. But I'll say that the overall biggest thing before we get into, because we're going to get into, supplements and food, which has a massive impact. But I read a study a long time ago from NASA, and NASA, and this comes back to time blocking, but, NASA discovered how, with the human brain, that the human brain, and these are averages. So some of you might be able to go longer. Some of you might not find that it's shorter for you. But the average human mind can have intense levels of focus for about 90 minutes straight before that starts to diminish and wane. So then it takes on average about 60 minutes to recover from that. So I've been following this for years. We call them in my businesses the 90-60s. So set a timer throughout the day where it's like, okay, we focus for 90 minutes, and we'll focus on 90 minutes on, like, a highly productive activity, like a money-making, highly productive activity. So then we're insanely focused on that, but that is like our zero distraction time, like no distraction. We're not checking emails. We're not answering our phones. We're not checking text messages. Like, so this is when it comes to work, right? So just intense focus on whatever that project is, whatever that thing is. Now, as soon as that alarm goes off after 90 minutes, then that allows us go into what we call our allowed interruption time. So this is us still working on things that need to get done, but we're allowed to be distracted. So this is where I'll check messages on my phone. This is where I'll check emails. This is like, it's all still shit that needs to get done. But then at the same time, it's allowing my brain to reset. And I'll tell you, man, if you can get to the point, it's very difficult, but if you can get to the point where you can complete 390s a day, it's like 390s followed by 360s a day, dude, it is a game changer in the business world. So following that. But then from there, removing outside distractions. So like my phone, I've got all my notifications off. So I have zero notifications that come onto my phone. So zero alerts. I guess you can call this a smartwatch, but it's a Garmin. So it's like tracking like my heart rate, pulse, but I'm not going to wear an Apple Watch where I get fucking alerts and that's distracting me all throughout the day. And right, like I don't want that, right? So now, but then again, I'm setting that alarm. So then I have times where, okay, I'll go in and check text message. I'll go check those emails. I'll go check, but I don't. And even on my computers, dude, I take off all those alerts, right? So I don't have that boom, that little distraction, because that will block your focus. And I heard at one point that it takes 11 minutes to recover from each interruption to regain our full focus. So if you break down like the average person's workday, 1/3 of their workday is just wasted on trying to regain that focus, right? So then from there, so like being intentional about, okay, well, what are outside distractions that could cause me to break focus? So like removing those notifications. And then like you go into my office, so I'm at my home office right now, but in my regular office, like everybody knows when my door is shut and locked, right? And I have the side window like blacked out so nobody can see in there. And for when I first started doing this, I had a sign that I had on the door that said, GSD mode in progress, do not interrupt.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Now everybody's just trained. Like anybody might, like everybody knows the quickest way to get fired is to knock on my door when my door is shut. Now I'll open it up during those 60s. Like you can come on, by me, within that time. But then that way it's like, okay, what are those different blocks? Like I can't be the God a minute guy. I can't be, whatever. So I can get that focus done and get that stuff done. So removing any outside interruptions, from other people, other alerts, because you got to remember, like every time that we get an email, every time you get a text, that's somebody else's agenda for you. That's not your own agenda. And this goes back to the last thing I'll say here. This is something that you said earlier, Jim, is, having that daily plan. So I do this every night before I end my business, kind of like working day, if you will. I spend about 20 minutes. First part of this is reflection. So I reflect on everything I got done that day. And I'm going through and asking myself, okay, did this get me one step closer to the goals that I have? Like, was this wasted time? Was this a distraction? So I'm reflecting on everything that I got done through that day. And then if it was a distraction, if it was wasted time, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to grow from it. But then from there, so that takes about 10 minutes. And then I'll spend the other 10 minutes on planning my next day. So from the second I wake up to the second I go to bed, I always have my full day plan. One of my mentors told me a long time ago that you never enter a day without it first being fully committed to paper. So in everything, like in my meals, my every work task I need to do, even my to-do tasks are committed to a calendar. So a 24-hour calendar, and it's broken down by 15-minute increments. So then that way I fit everything in there. And then it's like, then I just have to follow that calendar. So then there, I don't have to, because you talked about this earlier of like on Twitter, like jumping from topic to topic to topic. There is this thing that exists out there called decision fatigue. Like we only have so much mental energy to exhaust throughout the day. It's why guys like Steve Jobs wear the same outfit every single day. It's like the more that you don't have to make decisions throughout the day, the more mental energy that you're going to have. Right. The more mental energy you're going to have, the more willpower discipline that you're going to have, so I find those things, just kind of like from a, best practice throughout the day, things to be, massive for me personally.
Yeah, I think both of us, even though we have different methods and you're definitely more extreme and to the planning part of that, but, just really controlling the external inputs and being in control of that, right? Because otherwise you just kind of wander around all over the place. And it's very hard to maintain focus. It's hard to maintain, on point and try to get done what you want to get done. I mean, it's easy to get, it happens to me all the time. And I think unfortunately there's only so much ignoring I can do. But when I have a real issue with a customer or it's an urgent need, all break and start to deal with that. And then, by the time I'm in it and, solve the problem or whatever, it gets done, but then it's a waste of time because, that's a quick issue. But then for me to get back in that zone that I was in before, like you said, it takes a lot of effort if it's even possible. And I really like that. I think that 90 minutes just isolated with no breaks would be a game changer, man. But
Yeah.
I think that really being careful of what you're letting in and what you're consuming is key, especially in today's social media. It's that book is appropriately titled Stolen Focus, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you, dude, this was a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but I went through a 6-month period where I gave up my smartphone and I went
Yeah,
back to an old school flip phone, because
yeah,
I'm like, dude, like this thing's got to be doing damage. Now I wouldn't recommend that to most. And when I say that is like, just because I know we have a lot of realtors that listen to this channel, that if I was still in production working with clients, like I would have never done that. I'm at a position where I have assistants in, my businesses. So it's not like it wasn't going to hurt my business. I got people handling emails. I got people handling, that stuff. So, but man, going through that 6 months, dude, was like the best detox. It was, it got to a point, man, where it felt like I was in a world all by myself.
yeah.
Like you go
I
out,
could see
you go
that.
out, like everybody's just right here, and then the next thing I know, like when I'm like paying attention, because I'm actually driving, well, I don't have a phone to check or music to turn on or a podcast to stream. So like I'm just driving, paying attention, like you just become full observer mode. But then I'm like looking at how many people, like as soon as they get to a stoplight in their car, boom, they're on their phone. It's just like
Mhm.
boom, it's this other thing, dude. It's like, man, like I'm surprised there's not more damn accidents out there. Yeah, it was gnarly, man. I would have kept it going. There's two reasons why I didn't. Is my daughter had just got her first cell phone at that time. So if you guys remember like the old school flip phones that have like 3 digits per button, how long like to just like do a 1 sentence text, got to hit each button 3 times. It was like, so texting was a bitch. And then, with all the traveling I do, you can't get an Uber, so,
Right.
I'd have to go to the hotel concierge, explain that and it's hard to operate in today's world without a smartphone. Like you go out to eat at certain restaurants, like especially in
Right.
COVID, it's like only a QR code to get the menu, and trying to explain to people like, dude, I don't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
It got, but it also broke those habits where, yeah, now I have a smartphone, but I was able to, 6 months was a long enough time to break those negative habits. So I'm not sucked back into them.
Yeah. I remember you doing that, man. I was super jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be the
Yeah.
first thing I do when I retire, dude, is just throw it. Like, I won't have a phone altogether, dude. I'm going to go back to like an
Yeah.
old school home phone. That's it.
That's right. Yeah. Email me if you have to talk to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what about when it comes to, because I think it's equally as important and maybe not even more important. I mean, maybe even more important, I should say, from like a food and supplemental standpoint, because I know you and I have both experimented with so much shit.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about the most common thing first, caffeine, right? Um, there's a couple things with caffeine that people fall into. One is, consuming caffeine the moment you wake up. And certainly I've done that a lot in my life. But if you can delay that intake of caffeine at least an hour after you wake up, that caffeine is going to be more effective throughout the day and it's going to last longer and it'll enable you to consume less. Now, there's a scientific explanation for it that's, going to bore all you guys, but just trust me, try it out. I drink decaf coffee as my first coffee in the morning and then I switch. But see if you notice a difference. And that it's real dramatic. I mean, I can notice it on the days that I, for whatever reason, I do drink caffeine first thing in the morning. I do have to consume more, and it's not as effective. And I can tell that same day. I don't think it's just in my head, but there's the science behind it is very strong. The second part is, if you're at the point where you're consuming, in my opinion, 400 milligrams or more of caffeine a day, and you're still, tired, or you're really not getting that initial rush, then you need to wean off of caffeine and reset your receptors. And there's a couple ways to do that. You can replace a stimulant so that you're not totally crashed. You can kind of stop cold turkey and just tough through it for a couple of days, which, it's not recommended. Or you can kind of wean yourself back down, which takes a little bit longer and it's not as effective. So quitting cold turkey, if you were just going to stop, I would still recommend consuming something with, 15, 25 milligrams of caffeine just to kind of get the headache to go away. And that could be something like a tea, or, maybe a watered down coffee, or maybe, sometimes I'll do a decaf and then sprinkle in a little bit of instant with some caffeine in it to kind of make that up. I don't necessarily like that method. I prefer to switch stimulants. And one of the reasons why we made our product with no caffeine is so that you could use it either in conjunction with caffeine or instead of caffeine. And, ours has a stimulant called teacrine in a slow acting and a fast acting form. And I'll just use that in lieu of caffeine for the day and kind of wean off that way. Weaning usually takes 4 to 6 weeks to be really effective, but even if you're going to do it for 2 to 3 weeks, you'll notice when you go back, caffeine is much more effective. And so for me, I have that limit of 400 intake a day. And when that no longer is doing anything, I'll reset my receptors. But with me starting caffeine intake later in the day, I'm not even close to that anymore. I'm more at the 200, 300 milligram level and I'm wired. So it's definitely makes a big difference. As far as, supplement stimulants, that's kind of the two most common, or the two ways that I use that. We can go into nutrition, but I'll let you talk about the nutrition or the supplemental part.
Yeah. And when it comes to this, I'm a dude that, from a mental energy and focus standpoint, this is an obsession of mine, and I'll tell you guys about unhealthy things that I've done. I've tested a lot of different things, from microdosing LSD to, microdosing shrooms, LSD, to taking unhealthy amounts of Adderall. And the issue with a lot of those things, number one, with the first two is, they're highly illegal. And, even though microdosing doesn't get you high, it still gives you that, it's very common in like Silicon Valley, right? With that. And it definitely had a positive effect, but I found the downsides. That's what I'm always looking at is, how do I get the best positive effect without the downside? Like with Adderall as an example. You've got your baseline amount of dopamine that your brain's always secreting, right? Well, anything that you spike up with that, so whether it be chocolate, whether it be sex, whether it be a cigarette, whatever it is, however it spikes, whatever that percentage of spike is, it doesn't just then come down to baseline. It goes also that percentage below baseline, and then it has to reset before it comes up. So like if you look at like something like Adderall, which is probably, Adderall is going to spike your dopamine to the same level that like cocaine is, right? Which is like 1,000%, spike or whatever. I don't think it's 1,000%, but whatever it is, 1,000 something.
Significant.
Yeah. It's huge, right? Where like, sex might be, I don't know, 200. If you guys go read the molecule more, it's got all the breakdowns of this. But then, so then with that though, it's like you take it, you feel amazing with it, but then when you're not on it, it's like you're a fucking zombie. And then here's the problem, even deeper than that, is the more that so then it's like, okay, well then I just need to take, continue to take it at a higher frequency, right? Well, then eventually your baseline then drops down to a lower baseline. So then like eventually you got to take a break or you stop, right? So then not only are you crashing that much further from the new baseline, it can take months to reset that baseline, so it got to the point where, I was just like,
if it resets,
so I was just like, well, dude, like when I took it, I had productivity, but then it's almost like drinking. And then you have to, like those of you that are a little bit older, like me and Jim, it's like, in your early 20s, maybe you don't have to waste a day from being hungover. But when you start getting a little bit older, it's like you go out and party hard. It might be a full day or 2 days of recovery just to, there's payback, for that. Well, then it was like, okay, I'd have a highly productive day, but then my next day or two would be crap, and I was like, okay, this isn't good. And then as I started doing more research, I'm like, this is like one chemical away from being meth, and we don't really know the long-term effects and harmful effects. So then it was like, I was just looking for, natural, more effective ways that then when I wasn't doing those things, that I was able to, be effective with those. So, so I found two things. Well, I should say three things. Caffeine. Now, I'm definitely the opposite of Jim. What Jim said. I consume probably 1,000 milligrams or more of caffeine a day. I mean, I'm a 4 or 5 coffee cup drinker a day. Or sometimes 4 of these sugar-free Red Bulls, these little 8-ounce cans a day. Just depending on the day. I'll like here in the summertime, I like the sugar-free Red Bulls a little bit more than the hot coffee when it's 110 degrees outside. But caffeine definitely helps, helps me keeping going. And then, with our supplement with Zone, Zone was, when we created this nootropic, it was, at the time I was taking a lot of modafinil because I found modafinil to be like, and modafinil was created for people that suffer from narcolepsy or whatever,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a narcolepsy drug, or that's
yeah,
how
yeah,
it's FDA indicated.
yeah. So I found that to be like, okay, like that was kind of the happy medium against Adderall, like meaning I could take that without the severity of, feeling like shit afterwards, but man, it's a gray market product. I mean, I don't know what the legalities are of it. I'm still buying it, having to get it from funky places, and,
Yeah,
it's not necessarily all in the up and up. Right. With that, and I was looking to find a nootropic that would replace that, and Zone was the first one. Well, it was EMF, and then now it's new improved, and we changed the name to Zone. But since Zone came out, like I haven't had to touch anything else but that. I mean, it's essentially caffeine, that, and then I'll add, I mean, TRT. I think definitely, has made a difference when it comes to overall cognition and focus and mental energy. But do a Zone, and again, I'm probably more of an abuser of this stuff than Jim, but I'll do. On my average day, I do 2 doses a day of that. On intense work days, I do 3.
oof,
But then I don't have. But I mean, it can
yeah,
wire me for, mentally and from a focus
for
standpoint. I mean,
sure.
I can go for 16, 18 hours just straight of working, straight staring at a computer screen. I'm not tired, but then I don't have that negative crash either.
Yeah,
Then of course we got food and water intake and those things. But as far as, and then there's one other thing,
yeah,
which is nicotine. And I'm and not from a form of a cigarette, and everybody can take this with a grain of salt, whatever it may be, but from at least my research and due diligence on nicotine and my own experience with it. Now, again, everybody's got to, like, if somebody's got to extremely, now I have a very addictive personality, but I've never been addicted to, like when I go without nicotine, I don't have any withdrawals, I don't have, and I just chew the gum with it.
yeah,
But there's definitely a neuro effect that happens there with it. And
for sure.
I can't remember, I can't remember his name, but it's Andrew Huberman, one of Andrew Huberman's
Yeah,
mentors, that's a huge proponent of it. I first heard about it from a physician, a surgeon that, just swears by it, and I've done because again, for me, I'm always looking at negativity, and I've done a decent amount of due diligence on it, just making sure that this thing wasn't harmful. And I've yet to be able to find any negative like side effects from nicotine itself. Right now, that's going to be different
right.
from like if you're smoking cigarettes or, but like if you're, whether it be the nicotine patches or whether it be the, like a Nicorette gum, I definitely, see an enhanced element of focus when I have that going on.
Yeah, for sure. And to kind of echo a lot of what you said there. I mean, we've tried all the same drugs and nootropics, and modafinil was definitely my favorite. However, it comes with a high cost, right? It's always interrupted my sleep. It doesn't matter because I'll take a quarter dose and then my sleep is fucked up that night. And so it works really well for a short period of time if you don't use it often. And that's kind of why we developed Zone, is to mimic that effect without the side effect.
Yeah.
But anything that you take in that realm, there's going to be, no right is for free. So you got to keep that in mind, and really, do your own experimentation and figure out what right is worth it for you and how you can deal with the downtime, the downside of that. To your point, I'll add on nicotine. Nicotine is very important. It's a very powerful nootropic, and especially in learning new things. And, our old product that we had, Flow, that was one of the things that increased acetylcholine in your brain, and the combination of acetylcholine and nicotine are very powerful in learning new things. Now, you don't need to take a supplement to do that if you're eating enough eggs or sources of choline that will turn into acetylcholine in the brain. But that, that can have a powerful effect. And so I've done a lot of research, as have you, and nicotine in the way that we're consuming it, I don't think have any negative side effects. Maybe at the upper limit of that, you could get some vasoconstriction, but it's nothing in the form of like cigarette smoking as far as cardiovascular damage.
Maybe that's why I'm able to stay so focused with the learning element, because I eat 6 eggs every single day and I chew
yeah, you have plenty of choline.
Yeah, game a day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that has something to do with it. It's a very powerful nootropic, and that's like, you think about some of the great thinkers of all time. A lot of them had a cigar in their mouth, throughout the whole day. So
yeah, when
anyway.
I'm like doing a big project, dude, like that, my cocktail before I start any project, dude, is I'll get 2 cups of coffee, like we just out of the Keurig, right? Just, so I'll make 2 of them, put it in 1 cup, but then a dose of Zone, throw a piece of Nicorette in, and then it's just like I can be focused on a project for like 6 and 8 hours straight.
Well, yeah, anytime that I'm consuming new data like that, or have to learn, I have a chunk of stuff that I have to learn, same combination. It's caffeine, combination of our Zone, and then nicotine. Of course I'm hitting like, 2 milligrams, but same thing, man. That's my combination, and my choline levels are very high. So
yep.
Yeah.
Now, what have you found when it comes to, like you mentioned eggs and the power of that, but what else have you found, things to do or things to avoid that block that, either, because I mean, part of focus is not having mental fatigue. Yeah, right. Like if you are drained mentally, or if you have something that's creating brain fog, like that's going to block your overall focus.
Right. Well, we've dove deep in this too. And, a lot of people feel better fasting, feel a little bit more mental acuity fasting. I don't think there's anybody that feels great overeating, as far as the mental performance is concerned. Some people will attribute that to carbohydrate intake, but I just attribute it to overeating or eating a big meal. I don't think anybody eats a big meal and feels real sharp mentally. That's why a lot of people will fast during the morning. They feel that being in a slight, because you'll have ketone bodies in your bloodstream normally from fasting. And or if you go into full-blown ketosis, it does improve mental clarity for most people. Now, I've taken that a step further, and I call that the Dr. Manhattan project, because when you do it right, you feel like Dr. Manhattan, that blue guy from, I don't know what comic book or whatever, the guy, I don't know what it was.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it either.
You know who you're talking. Yeah. And that's creating a scenario where you have a massive amount of ketones in your bloodstream. And to do that, you'll fast. And then there's a product called exogenous ketones. And you'll take that and it'll put you into a very deep state of ketosis, almost like you've been in nutritional ketosis for months and doing it perfectly. And with that is like being on a super drug. Those doses of exogenous ketones are about $100 a hit. So they're very expensive. They might have come down now, but they're very expensive. And it's not something that I could do every day or maintain. But, there's things out there that dietary wise that affect people very positively. For me, it's not worth, I don't tend to eat huge in the morning anyway, especially when I'm doing a lot of work. I'll maybe slam a couple eggs or something just really small, maybe a protein hit, something like that to sustain me. But I feel better not over consuming or eating a very large meal. Some people will say ketosis, so really depends. It's something that you should experiment with. And if you remember the bulletproof coffee, everybody was like, "Oh, I feel great." This and that. Well, it's caffeine and a bunch of fat that, if you're fasting, could raise, or MCT oil could raise the amount of ketones in your bloodstream. So.
Yeah. And for me, dude, it's, and I actually learned this from you, but, what I started doing is every meal that I ate, I just started journaling I set an alarm for 2 hours after I eat that meal, and then just journal. Okay, how did I feel over the last 2 hours from an energy standpoint, mental energy standpoint? Was I lethargic? Was, did I feel brain fog? Like, how did I feel physically and mentally, with that? So then I was able to discover, what foods are best for me, and in quantities with that as well. To your point, the only time that I can overeat and not feel like shit physically and mentally is if I, like, on a 20-hour long fast. And then if I have a big meal, it doesn't seem to impact me. That's the only time.
Right.
Like, usually, dude, it's like I need to go take a nap on the couch, man. Like, it just knocks me out. So, portion control, but then from there, knowing, like, I know for me, and this could be because of my insulin sensitivity, just how I'm wired or whatever. Maybe not. Maybe it does this to other people too. But staying away from carbohydrates. And when I say that, I'm talking like, breads, pastas, lower carbohydrate meals, high protein meals seem to, work best with me, keep my water intake high throughout the day. For me too, sleep is big, as far as, I mean, I used to, just try to push the limits on sleep, but I have found for me, man, like, I'd rather have 16 hours to get shit done, like have 8 hours of sleep and have only 16 hours to get shit done versus, 20 hours and 4 hours. I'm just that much more effective, that much more productive,
For sure.
through that time. Yeah, I can't think of anything really other than to add to that, because we already talked about the supplements.
We'll second the hydration, man. That's huge. And we've talked about different electrolyte products that we use. I'm a huge proponent of sodium, salt, all my meals, and the hydration thing, if you're dehydrated, not only physically, but mental performance is massively impacted. And so you should be peeing throughout the day, at least, at a minimum. And then the sleep issue, maybe it's because I'm older and I'm still trying to train hard. And, my mentally, by the time most end of the days roll around, I'm mentally exhausted. But if I miss my sleep, man, I'm just not as good. I'm just not. And, I'm very regimented about my sleep. I'm in bed at 9 o'clock at night, and I usually wake up on my own at 5 in the morning. And I feel great doing that. And when that's impacted either way, I notice a big difference, whether I'm training that day or whether I'm working or both. So it has a massive impact on me.
Yeah, and I think too that, at least from my own personal experience, and also what I've heard and read from others as well, though, is when it comes to sleep, like, so many people have a morning routine, but they don't have an evening routine. It's like, to me, like, I think my evening routine is more important than my morning routine, because that's what allows my morning to take place. But it's, like, what's your routine in the evening to wind down, to be able to, like, I try not to have any work for at least an hour before I go to bed to start slowly shutting down my mind. I try to minimize my exposure to blue light, and you got the glasses on that you just put on. So I'll wear my blue light blockers or whatever. And I, like, I don't have any blue light I have all the yellow light in my house, but in my office, everything's the blue light. It's like the 5,000, whatever on the Kelvin scale. So it's super light, which creates more energy throughout the day. But then when I get out of that office, get to home, I want it more dim. I do, even though I drink a lot of caffeine throughout the day, I definitely start to minimize it. I know at what times I need to be having it completely, cut out. Otherwise I can't go to sleep. But yeah, just like you, man, I'm really strict at going to bed the same time every night. And sometimes that can deviate. I mean, I get it. We all have
A little
kids,
bit,
like,
sure.
maybe they have a sports game going on at night, and, I have to stay up a little bit later. But no matter what, even the days I have to stay up late, I make sure I'm up at the same time every single day. So it's just my body gets used to it. I'm in that rhythm, and rocking and rolling with that. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I have completely spaced it and forgot. But yeah, sleep element, morning routine, evening routine, highly, highly important.
Yeah, if I go to bed at 9 and start reading my book, I always read a book before I go to bed. And about 20 minutes in, if it drops out of my hand, then I know I'm doing things right. If I can't fall asleep, or if I'm tossing a turn, I read for hours, I know I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think sleep hygiene and, room cooler and all that stuff is very important. And, you kind of got to experiment with it, but the more regimented you are at that schedule. And listen, I know it's kind of hippy dippy, but if you can just walk outside for like 5 minutes to watch the sunset, doesn't have to be right at sunset, but the first hour after sunset, and do the same thing at night, I would be surprised if you don't feel a difference. It really helps. And, try it for a week or two and see if it doesn't improve your sleep cycle.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing is like a lot of this stuff, you start breaking down everything that we're talking about. And this is, for those that are watching, listening, you might be like, oh man, that's too much stuff for me to try to start implementing and doing. It's like, dude, just do, introduce one new thing at a time.
Yeah.
And
Add
eventually,
one.
like, it becomes habitual. It's not like you got to do it all overnight. But it is, as we said earlier, man, it's like, the operation of the world of just how it's set up today is against us. So if
Right.
you and to the extreme, when we look at social media, when we look at smartphones, when we are here all day long, looking down, scrolling, doing it's when our whole world is rigged to distract us. You got to take some extremes to counteract it. It's no different than, I look at this as no different than doing TRT and the hormone replacement stuff that you and I always talk about, Jim, is like, look, why do we have to do that stuff? It's because, dude, like, we're just trying to get back to our baseline of homeostasis of how our bodies probably were a couple hundred years ago before we introduced, all these toxins and all this stuff into our diets and just the environment and the air. It's, that's the point of hormone replacement therapy, is just to get you back to homeostasis of how your body's supposed to be reacting. So it's like, we have these extreme measures in that kind of same way, just to get us back to having the same ability to go out there and focus that we naturally are supposed to really be able to have.
And, I've always looked at it this way too. If you're trying to be uncommon, if you're trying to be extraordinary, or even trying to, whatever that means to you, top performer, you can't be doing what everybody else is doing. And just from that, if you look at that, you look at what everybody else eats, you look at what everybody does, or everybody does with social media and what their hygiene is on their phone, what their distraction levels are. I mean, that's always just been a kind of rule of me. If I see everybody headed right, I'm probably going left no matter what. And it's the same in this case, man. I want to be very controlling of what I take in and very tight of what I let influence me. And then, just overall, I only have so much brain power. I only have so much capacity during the day. And do I want to focus it on, reading Twitter for 20 minutes? Or do I want to get, move my business ahead more that day? Well, I'll move to the business head. And if that means I miss out on a couple of memes, so be it. I'll be okay.
Yeah, dude. Well, yeah. And I'm going to say this before I get to the next one, because I remember what I was going to talk about earlier. Yeah. I mean, so much of people's, and this has probably always been taking place, but again, you just got to understand that it's all mental energy and how do you want to exhaust it. So if you have limited amounts throughout the day, like how do you want to invest that? How do you, what do you want to waste it on exhaustion of? It's like people that watch the news, and people that I hear that, spend so much of their brain power thinking about, and whether it be conversations and time wasted on, I don't know, debating politics or whatever. I'm just like, like, to me, it's, okay, politicians historically have always been corrupt. There's no difference today in the political system than there was 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, so like, why am I going to exhaust my mental energy on something that isn't having a direct impact on my life? And maybe politics was a bad example, because I'm not saying that that's not important to go out there and vote and, do those things. But, just really asking yourself, like, is this a good use of my mental energy and my focus, my time? Is it really improving your life? Is it really getting you a step closer to, because it's like every thought that you have, again, it's that law of that decision fatigue. Every decision you
Yeah.
have to make all throughout the day, it wanes on that. So if I'm making decisions and getting my head wrapped up into stupid shit that doesn't impact my life, that's going to impact it. So just stay away from the stupid shit and focus on the shit that matters. The other thing I was going to say that I forgot to say earlier is, and this is something I think is really important, and I get asked a lot about this, because people hear that, oh man, like, I mean, my alarm's set for 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. every day, but most days I naturally wake up around 2. So I usually wake up, and I just pop up out of bed at that time, and people will hear that. So even at the 3 a.m., they're like, oh man, at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
wake up, like, and they'll want to emulate it and go out there and you hear of others, a lot of successful people waking up early, not trying to put myself in the same bucket as others or whatever. But at the end of the day, dude, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't freaking matter. I know so many uber successful people that fucking sleep until 9 every day, or I mean, I think Elon Musk sleeps until like 7 every day. Like, does it, but I think what I find though, and what they've done is they know themselves, right? They take the time to understand, okay, how do you operate best? The reason why I get up at 3 a.m. or earlier every single day is I'm really good in like early in the day. So like I'm fresh in the mornings, I got a ton of mental energy, I'm ready to rock and roll. But by about 7 o'clock at night, dude, I suck, right? Now I know people that are the opposite of that. I have friends that like more night owls, they have so much creativity in the evenings, so like understand too, like what are the hours of the day? Like where are you at your best? And put those hours to work, like really breaking that down and really thinking about like, and I even do that with my self-development, whatever, like, am I better at self-development early in the day? Even my activities that I got to do for work, like okay, where do I have the most mental energy? And I put those hard tasks, I stack those during those times. So really paying attention, I think it makes a big difference.
Well, and all the things we've talked about, man, you got to beta test it for yourself. You got to test it and see if it works for you. And if not, how can you modify it to work for you? And maybe it doesn't, then you throw it out and go to the next thing. But all this is, pay attention to your output versus the stimulus. If you change something and it doesn't affect you at all, okay, maybe that's not the right change for you. If it affects you negatively, is there something that you can change or tweak to make it affect you differently, and find something, whatever the positive is, and keep that and incorporate it into your schedule.
Yep. Love it. All right, dude. So I want to change topics for a minute, but is there anything last things that you want to add on focus?
No, good.
All right. So, and the only reason I'm bringing this up as we're recording is because we created a video around it, but we dropped a video on the Liver King, and we kind of broke down our thoughts, which was, a different, thoughts than, I mean, he had a lot of people getting a lot of hate on him out there. And, we kind of came out more, not saying that what he did was okay, but we kind of came out defending him a little bit, or it wasn't hating on him, but then also talking about, how is getting it blown out of proportion about what he was actually taking and how it actually is a smaller dose than what's getting purported to be. But then it was like the day after that, like he came out with his apology video. And what'd you think, man? How did you think he handled that situation?
Well, there's two parts, right? I like the part that he said, "Hey, I fucked up, and this is how I did it. This is how it happened." But then he went into, I never took DECA, I never took Winstrol, I never took any of that stuff. It was just testosterone. So he kind of lied again. That's what he said he was taking. And those are things that I know for a fact that you can get prescribed. And so if he was getting those from a provider, which I suspect because the dosages were correct from a provider, then he was getting them scripted and he was taking them. So he said he didn't take those things. He was only taking testosterone. So lied again. And then he kind of said, the one kind of part that some people dug into, and that I could maybe agree with, was that, he lied to get us the message, the overall message. And so, man, kudos on the first part where he said, "Hey, I fucked up. This is how it happened. This is how I kept the lie going, and this is why." But then he lied again about not taking the substances that the email clearly said he was on. And then, kind of said that, I did those things and I kept the lie up to get my good message out for you because you need it. And so I didn't like those two parts, but, hey, I don't know how you handle, I think just that first part where he said he fucked up and why it happened and how it happened, and apologized. He should have shut it off and then, but he's the Liver King. So I don't know, but what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought he handled it good, man. I haven't, he's been putting out a lot of content since. So I heard the apology video, and then I listened to his podcast with Patrick David Bett, and that was like a 2-hour podcast. And and I could have swore I heard him say that he did take those other things, but the Winstrol or whatever messed up his liver enzymes, so he got off of that. But then he admitted to, still being on the testosterone and the 10 IUs a day of growth hormone, And it's actually another podcast I listened to. I just can't remember the name of it. So I listened to Patrick David Bett one, and then there was another one I listened to, and he came on there and he was like, yeah, I'm taking steroids. And then the guys even said, well, I mean, what you're really on is a TRT, he's like, yeah, but it's still a steroid. And he goes, I'm just going to call it what it is. I'm taking steroids. And
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought, I mean, we'll see. I thought the apology video was great though. And I mean, we'll see. Cause he also talked now about, going natural because he believes in this message so much, so
It's
that
full of shit.
he's going to go natural and he's getting the help to wean off this stuff. And then, we'll see, but what I liked about it too is, he opened up quite a bit on, his own mental issues,
Sure. Yeah.
because dude, I think it is, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like all of us want to feel proud of our bodies and and people cope with that in different ways, but him talking about like talking about like the deeper issue, like the reason why he's really on all this stuff,
Right.
and he started breaking out his childhood, how he was bullied so much and how he like would never stand up to like, and he just hated that about himself. And, and they started working out and realizing that he was strong and this, but he's like, he has this addiction to working out where he has to work out 2 days or 2 times a day, sometimes 3, sometimes even 4, with this addiction. But this allows him to do that even at his age now, to push through and work out with that intensity, but there's something in he's like talking about how he's got to go do the work. And this is kind of uncovering that deeper issue of like, what is it within his own mentality, that he has to, push himself that hard to just, feel good about himself. And I don't know, I think that brings up another important, subjects, for people to really think about talking about, because it is thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's, I think that we all do, whether it be, through work, whether it be through working out, whether it be through whatever is, just that feeling of self-worth, like I look at this all the time, and maybe it's because I was obese for so long, but man, like I don't feel good about myself. And like, if I'm not lean, if I'm not in good shape, like it fucks with my head. And maybe I should be like everybody else where it's like, oh, I should be strong and not care what my body looks like and whatever. But the reality is, dude, is it fucks with me, right? Like when I say that, it's not like, I still go out there and crush it and work and so forth. But from a confidence level standpoint, like there's a part of me that just, I don't know, maybe it's because for so long I just was so fat and hated myself for so long and my body for so long that, I need that to have that, self-worth or whatever. But, who knows? I mean, it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Well, I think because, I've coached all kinds of people, man. I've coached people that are, 400 pounds and then they've lost the weight. And so I've got to see this, start from that end and then end up kind of on our side. And then I've coached, professional bodybuilders and people who are professional physique athletes. And I've almost been one, my whole life. I was a fat kid and then transformed, out of that. And I think everybody has these same fucking issues with their body. There's very few people who are completely free of it, and don't really give a shit. They're not self-conscious about it at some level. And whether you're super fit or you're super fat, I think, it's both sides. And so you and I have body issues, and I'm sure that everybody does. When I look in the mirror, I don't see what I see. I see something different. And I realize that, now that I'm older and, I've dealt with it longer and I work on it, it's easier for me to look in the mirror and be, not completely disgusted with my body, or whatever. And I have a comfort zone that's a little bit wider than it's ever been. And I think everybody deals with it. It doesn't matter if you're in shape or not. I really do. It's just working on, what your comfort zone is and what does it cost to stay there. Now, I always love the feeling of getting into my dress pants or my suit or whatever, and it being loose around the waist. And when that happens, everything fucking is better. It just is, it just is. Now, is it hard for me to get down there? Is it cost a lot? No, it's just a little bit of effort. And for me, that's a healthy kind of way to deal with it and view it, Now the Liver King, he did talk about some of those issues and all that. And I know where he's coming from, man. I mean, I get it. If you let yourself go to that extreme, yeah, shit, I've had a bulimic client, and that I get that whole mindset, but you can break out of it and you get to the point where you kind of accept where you're at and make it, sustainable for your life and without killing yourself.
Yeah.
And I think all of us deal with that, man. We all do.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way I look at it, at least for myself, is at least it's, because I'm not like Liver King that has to go train 2-3 times a day and kill myself.
Yeah.
I just, want to feel a certain way and have an aesthetic look. And,
Right.
but I look at it as like, okay, well, at least this is a healthy obsession versus, so I'm like, maybe it's not a negative either.
Shooting heroin. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I haven't listened to the podcast after his apology. That's the micro critique of his apology. But, I think he can really come out and, kind of turn it around. And I think he's done that by admitting what he did. And then, I don't know if it's going natural and seeing what happened. I don't even know if anybody's going to care or believe him. I think if he was just going to say, hey, here's my prescription from my doctor and this is what I'm on and here's my blood work and leave it at that. If it's a TRT dose and you're just replacing what you need with your testosterone level to be healthy, then there's nothing, that's what he should do. This going clean is kind of stupid. I think
Yep.
it's going to fail. And if he actually does it, he's going to see a massive reduction. He's going to see a different change in his body. Because if he actually needs testosterone, which he does, I can almost guarantee you he has a physiological need to be on replacement therapy, then, it's not going to go well.
Yep.
But
Be
interesting, man. He has a chance to really turn around and expose a lot of these things too, like self-identity and, could really help a lot of people, could open up those subjects for a lot of people to talk about and acknowledge and help deal with.
Yeah. And that's what, like I said on that last video that we were on is, and I listened to him in this, and maybe for me, it's different because I don't watch short form content as we talked about earlier, so I'm, but it's like, man, I'm a fan that, even through all this, remained a fan through his, and not about the working out stuff, the dude's brilliant, but then the way that, he just leads his family and his relationship with his kids and his wife and, like all of that stuff, like to me, it's even if it's all facade, right?
Yeah.
It's still inspirational to me.
Yeah.
Right, my guy. So to me, it makes me want to be better and then be a better, father, husband, all those things. It makes me want to be better. And, but then, him getting deep into like his childhood and the bowling, and he, how he grew up without a father and, getting his ass beat every single day and all those struggles, right? Like, it I don't know, it made me, connect with him that much more and, understand what he's going through. So, hopefully this will be, a positive for him. Like I said, man, I'm still a fan. So
yeah, there's a lot there, dude. I couldn't have done, the workouts that I put myself through for probably 20 years. I couldn't have done it without the trauma I went through. But that's what I use for rocket fuel. There's no fucking way I could have gotten the mental headspace to do that shit if there wasn't something. You can't just motivation like I want to look like that guy. That doesn't work. That there's no amount of that on the earth. It has to come. I think it has to come from a real dark place. And you take that shit and you either let it destroy you or you turn it into rocket fuel. And fortunate for me, I found this outlet, and I get it, man. 100%, I get it. I do, and I think it's good for him to talk about. And if that gets more of the message out, that's great. He has a real chance to kind of save what happened, and I hope he does, man. Because the guy's fucking savage, like we talked about. I respect the fuck out of his work ethic, and he wasn't on. If that was what he was taking, it's like we said before, man. I've seen fitness chicks take twice that. So
yeah, yep, 100%.
Anyway.
All right, brother. Well, this has been awesome, man. As always, appreciate you taking time to be here, and those watching and listening, man. We truly appreciate you guys' support. If you want to go check out Zone, our nootropic, all the link right below, but you can also go to Forge Life. That's FORJLIFE.com, forgelife.com. Supplement's called Zone. That's our nootropic. The other supplement on there is an eye supplement that just can, help with eye strain, also help with focus as well. So your eyes don't get so tired from looking at all these blue devices all day. So you can check that out on there as well. But as always, we appreciate you guys. Keep crushing it, and we'll see you next time. Peace.